Is this better? Hello?
Yes, now we can hear.
That's better.
Technical issues at the last meeting, so my settings are a little bit different, so I apologize.
So nobody other than Justin and
Exactly.
Jennifer, okay. All right, 6A, TID Overview Services, Baird and Company.
All right, so we have Justin here from Baird to provide an overview of the TID overview services. Included within the packet is the proposed general services agreement, which outlines the scope of work and what services would be performed. Then they also did provide an example of an additional service that they provided for the town of Freedom, which would serve as an example for some of the different services that they could provide. So without going into too much more detail, I just wanted to provide an opportunity for Justin to give his overview of what the services that are being proposed.
So before we start though, I just want to make sure, because I asked for a recalibration. And either Justin or Ben, if I'm opening this up incorrectly, please stop me, but this is Baird has provided services to the village in the past, but what's being presented, as I understand it, is a new or potentially a new suite of services above what they provide today.
So they've provided pro forma services, so essentially the TID analysis of what is based off of our budget. What's included here is essentially additional management services for the TID. But I think that Justin might be able to describe the best of what some of the benefits are for the TID overview services versus just having on call for assistance.
I guess, Justin, this is Mike Laskowitz. As a committee member, I just would like to make sure that I understand when you're done with your presentation, what you're actually proposing and the cost versus what the previous services were and the cost, so that we have an idea of what the comparison is.
Yep, absolutely. And to make that very clear, the Town of Freedom report that you see in there, that's the service that's being proposed. Right now, you do not have that at the Village of Sister Bay. So we would provide basically what that Town of Freedom example that you have in your packet. That's what we would go through and evaluate in TID number 1, in TID number 2, and put together a report for the village that demonstrates kind of all the historical stuff, what's going on with TID legislation, takes a deep dive into how things are forward looking and when things are potentially going to be closing, what the plan is for transfers back to the different funds that have advanced funds in the past for this TIF district, for the different TIF districts. So that's ultimately what this service for the $12,000 or $1,250 per TID is essentially doing. Just to give you a full understanding of the two TIDs for all board members to be able to understand the history and what the plan is kind of looking forward. That's not something we've done for the.
Okay, so that's helpful. So as an example, one point you made is that you would present and help the finance committee and the board ultimately make decisions on the reallocation of dollars back to the general fund from the TID. Is that what I heard you say? I mean, in the past, you've done that for us. Baird came up with the calculation and provided it to the village staff. What you're saying is, rather than being reactionary, this is a proactive approach to that. I want to make sure I understand.
I think you're right, Mike. This is a little bit more proactive. I mean, in the past, it has been in collaboration with, say, Tasha or Vlad in the past of here's what they're seeing, and we essentially model it out based on how things are looking from the village's end. This kind of takes that same approach, but also looks at it and is a little bit more collaborative in what makes the most sense. Do we try to replenish certain funds first versus other ones? How do we want to go about doing the transfers? So yeah, I mean, part of the analysis is to work with Ben and Vlad and really come up with a strategy that probably better suits what makes the most sense based on the situation year over year.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I appreciate that. It helps me understand what I should be expecting here. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Then I have a question for you. As a member of the Joint Review Board, we have seen pro formas every year at our meeting in June. So I have seen these before.
Correct. Yep. It's basically incorporating these TID pro formas based on a current status kind of look, as well as, we model in some stuff if we think it's for sure happening in the future, whether it's, development or construction increment, et cetera. This is more, I guess, of also taking a historical look at how we got to this point to date. So everyone has a clear understanding of how we got here and why these transfers, are taking place the way they are. Again, it's more, if you want to move forward with this, that's kind of what this would dive more into, is that historical aspect of the pro formas.
So Denise, I mean, that was kind of my question. I'm trying to understand here what's different about what they're proposing versus what's happened historically. And I don't have your history, so I can't comment, but it seems like you're also kind of saying you've seen some of this before, which
I
was
see it
included,
every year.
which was included in their existing service, as opposed to this incremental service that they are pitching us today.
Well, I think we, all I know is that we see it every year, for Joint Review Board in June.
Okay.
I don't know when it's worked through. Maybe it's not as historical, maybe with a lot of new people on finance. I can't say whether, it is a good thing or a bad thing to spend this money on each of the TIFs. Obviously, I won't be here. So that's your call to make.
Yeah.
So when you saw it, what time of year did you see it?
Our meeting is usually every June. We
June,
have to
okay.
meet once a year
All
unless
right.
something has changed.
So just before budget season? Not right before, but, and then that it's, you are on there, but is there any other, like, is Glad a part of that, anybody?
All the representatives from the taxing districts are there.
Okay,
So it's, myself, somebody from Gibraltar, Ken Bobbish from the county.
Okay.
And I think it's Mark Wyndham from Gibraltar has been there the last couple of years. For
Okay.
years, they didn't have a representative ever show up to the meetings until Mark Wyndham started showing up. There's somebody from NWTC that's interchanged a little bit. And our meetings really, because Joint Board of Review understand everything, our meetings last about 15 minutes.
gotcha, okay,
We review all the information. If there's a small presentation, that's not written in there, like sometimes there have been things that, projects that the village knows are kind of up and coming, but they're not through the, the pipeline yet. And so then we will inform the other taxing districts, on this is gonna be added to it, there will be more money, et cetera, or whatever. It's just kind of keeping everybody abreast. We have to do it by statute also.
okay.
Good.
So it's what you guys want or need.
So you get to see a comprehensive overview of the TIDs.
There's always a
Joint.
pro forma in that meeting.
Would anybody else have seen that? Like, would
It would've
anybody
been
else
in
on the
the
board to?
Packet,
But does that go to everybody?
if you signed up for it, or you can
Or
just find
just
it
the
under, that meeting.
But I think, do you mean, would it have gone to the board or would it have gone to finance? That
Right, I
me.
was gonna say, cause no, I think we would have had to go find it. Because I don't think I've saw.
Cause yeah,
that.
Joint Review Board is kind of like totally separate from.
Right, okay, cause I was like, I've not seen anything like this before, and it would be helpful, but if you're saying that. There's basically the same thing as provided every June.
I mean, am I misspeaking, Justin?
No, I mean, so like in the packet. Well, why don't, if I could share my screen, maybe that would be easier.
Might have to pull some blinds.
I don't believe this one works.
Can everyone see my screen? Okay,
Yes, Justin,
Okay.
I can see it.
thanks, Jen.
Yep.
So what we do on a annual basis, as Denise is kind of saying, is we just update this pro forma to show kind of where things are as of today. So we take the latest DOR numbers, we look at your audit and essentially just update this pro forma. And where these reimbursements come from, that's more, from it would have been from Julie or Vlad or Tasha at the time, based on those reimbursements. But that's essentially what Denise is kind of saying is we update that piece on an annual basis on behalf of the village, part of our kind of like what we just do for the village on an annual basis. So what you have in front of you, the TID overview, is just honestly, it's a lot more kind of historical detail of how we get to those numbers and why those numbers are there. So some municipalities like to, especially with newer boards or newer administrators, they like to get that kind of detailed, comprehensive thing. And if you want to update it in a couple of years, you can. Some have us update it annually. Probably, with only having 2 TID districts, probably doesn't make sense to update, annually. But for some of our clients that have, 15 TID districts, some of them like it updated more regularly.
So Vlad, do you think this is a good tool? Would this be a good tool for us to?
So going back to joint board of review, as Justin said, they do provide some pro forma, which is supplemental material to yearly reports. And so each year you have to submit report with DOR for each TID. So that is supplemental material saying like why those expenses, and here is, you can track them down. This one, it's just like such a micro approach, which breaks things down. The level, it's like easier to comprehend,
Okay,
easier to understand. It would be very helpful. But the good part, this service is actually can be expanded to TID, so general fund and have to pay
yeah, I
for
saw
it.
that.
I mean, it would help potentially avoid mistakes.
Mhm. Okay,
I think it's worth it.
okay.
Julie, can you let me in so I can see?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay.
There's nothing up anyway.
Okay, I just
They're
wanted,
good now.
Got it.
thank you.
Recording in progress.
Shoot, if I can't.
Okay, well, it's not a lot of money. Sorry.
I'm gonna just turn it off. It says I'm muted, but it's.
You could turn it's your laptop. Just turn the sound down.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
So I love the sound of my voice. They keep talking. I don't think it's a lot of money, and if it can help Vlad, I'm fine with that. If it's, I think the point was, is this redundant? I think that's kind of what we're wondering about, but it seems like the difference is that there's more detail that helps you.
Well, I mean,
This is not my wheelhouse.
I think we should listen to the presentation before we make a
You're right.
decision.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to make sure I was thinking and looking at the right thing, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's do it.
Justin, I think you have the floor.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just kind of share my screen here and
You can look at-
No, I'll be okay. I got our copies.
does everyone see the Town of Freedom presentation? Okay. I mean, we would put together something very similar to this, and this is the one that kind of came to my mind because there's, you know, three TID districts, so not a ton of them out there. But really talking through kind of the history of the the different TID districts, the area, the maps of each one, what the boundary looks like, the summary of the increment over the period of time, when its anticipated closing date is, all of that information. I think it's always interesting when we look at the history of the value increment, especially if we look at TID number 8, or I mean TID number 1 for Village of Sister Bay, because of the timing of when that was created and then going through the financial crisis. I think that'll be kind of interesting to see how the increment looked over a period of time, to the point where now it's obviously doing much better than when it was first created, to the point where now it can repay everything, and close with a positive surplus, which, you know, 5 years ago that didn't look to be the case. We'll go through all the project cost details, kind of over the history of the tax increment district, ultimately showing how we got to, you know, the different costs and the different the years that those costs were implemented, the different incentives for development that took place, and then ultimately put together that cash flow pro forma showing a little bit more historical perspective, plus any future that, you know, in working with Ben and you know, and others that, you know, they foresee, we'll model that in here to show what the history plus the potential future increment may look like, and ultimately what the revenues and what year we anticipate the closing to occur. We can also take a look at, you know, do you want to take advantage of affordable housing, that extension, and create a fund for that. Those are all things that we can take a look at as part of this. And then it just kind of does the same thing for TID number 2 in here, and then the same thing for TID number 3. Then we go into different, you know, if there's any project plan amendments that we're kind of foreseeing with Ben, and really kind of saying, okay, do we think anything should be changed in the current project plans? Now, TID number 1, we really can't do much with that one because that's past the expenditure period and so forth. But the other TID, we could take a look at and say, you know, does it make sense to amend that TID? If you guys are seeing additional areas that may be worth development, or does it make sense to potentially create a new tax increment district? Now, obviously, we need to take a look at the 12% test. We need to take a look at a lot of different things. But there is that new residential housing TID legislation that was just approved in the last week, that possibly makes sense for the village. So we can take a look at that, see if it makes sense. To potentially.
Then what was that signed by the governor?
Yes, it just was.
And so if I can take you on a tangent just for a second, as long as you brought that up. So we have a housing project in TID, in one of the TIDs. And now this new TID is available to us. Is that a conversation that you would have with this committee moving forward on whether or not it's best to stay in the current TID and have this policy and everything? Or can we remove that out of a TID and create a different, create the housing TID?
Yeah, great question, Denise. And John, if you could chime in if I'm missing anything, because this is I mean, it's all kind of new information coming out, but I believe we were not able to create any of the, create a new TID under this new legislation until October of this
October
year.
1st, correct.
And the details of all the requirements in order to create that TID is still kind of being fleshed out, in my opinion. Because there's certain, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's certain density that needs to be created, and
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's only for single and two family, so duplexes kind of housing. And then there's lot size requirements and things of that sort. So yes, that is there. And the other feature is it's outside the 12% limit. So the 3% limit it allows to be a separate out of there. So that's one of the other benefits. So, but more to come and more information on that.
Because I think that would be seeing that we have somebody who has requested some funds, what the right avenue would be, and what TID it can or should be in. It is a timely conversation, I believe. I think that we can have a lot of conversations, before you can create a new TID as of October 1st. But I just, you know, for the sake of the committee and, for Baird and the two of you, I just want to make sure that you are all working together, and having these conversations in the lead up to that October 1st deadline.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about, Denise, is like if we're talking TID number 2, you know, that one was created in 2018. So the max life is 2038. Depending on what type of, you know, incentive, if there is an incentive that needs to take place, does 2038 give you enough time to recover any type of incentive related to the project? You know, with this other legislation, if you were to create a new taxing grid district under the new housing one, that would start, you know, giving you the full 20 years if it were to be created in later this year, and you'd have just a little bit more time to recover expenditures if you needed that amount of time. And then again, that's all part of the pro forma analysis that would need to take place to figure out what makes the most sense.
And right now, Sister Bay is over the 12% at 14%. So they won't be able to create a TID under the regular at the current equalized value. So,
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
yep.
That 3% versus 12% calculation, how is that determined? I'm sorry, I don't know.
It's based on the equalized value of the community versus what's already in the existing TIDs.
I see.
So the 12% is the normal TIDs that you can create and has been in effect. The 3% is an addition, separate calculation that this new legislation has introduced.
And one last question about the new legislation. I pulled it up, but I can't tell this. Would it apply if created where there was an existing TID?
Yeah, Mike, what you can do, and again, this is all new, so we're still kind of working through details of all this, but typically what you could do is what's called an overlay district. You could basically carve out whatever area you're thinking about for the development, and create the TID district around that.
Okay.
You can overlay the existing area that you want. The issue with doing that is you couldn't do that right now because you're over the 12% test.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So kind of going back to the presentation part of it, yeah, I mean, we'll just kind of lay out the different state statutes related to TID laws, so everyone can kind of use that as a reference point. We'll obviously put in the new housing TID legislation once as more details continue to come out on that, and then kind of just some concluding observations and suggestions that may, you know, we kind of are seeing. And again, a lot of this is in coordination with staff and trying to figure out, you know, what's the best approach as we look forward, whether we look at this housing TID or the existing ones and the advances. We can all look through that, and if the affordable housing an extension makes sense as well. So that's kind of everything. So we have a lot of the information, and Denise, like you were saying, I mean, a lot of this, that's why the cost is what it is. I mean, we've got a lot of the pieces, but it's still going to be a lot of kind of in coordination with Ben and others to try to figure out, the historical perspective of things as well.
Thank you, Justin.
Yep.
I think it would be helpful to have all the information in one place, and then maybe every 3 to 5 years do a review of it instead of every year.
So Justin, can we look at page 6 of your deck? Just as an example, I'm just going to use this to kind of test how maybe your service would work with the village, okay? So with the Town of Freedom, when you look at your slide, number 6, number 20 on the packet deck, you have cumulative value increments, actual, projected cumulative value increment, but you're gonna have to explain that to me because it looks like in this example, this particular, I guess it's TID 001A in the Town of Freedom. So it sounds like they had kind of rough sailing here through 2021. Am I reading that correctly?
Versus the original projections.
Versus the
TID was
original
created.
projection. And then in 2022, we added the 10 million for cumulative value increment. Help me understand what that is and what you might have advised the village or the town to change at that, or the city or village to change at that point.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily advising them to change anything. I think it's just really to show the board, because they were interested in a lot of this type of stuff, to see, well, how did we end up compared to when we created this thing? And we wanted to, we were putting in all these projections. Were we too aggressive in our projections? Were we too, how did things end up shaking out when we first created this to ultimately show? Was it a success versus what we thought originally, or did it come in less than what we originally kind of thought? And based on this, the actual cumulative is higher than what they were putting in their project plans of what they thought the increment would be. So they're coming out ahead versus what they had kind of proposed to the joint review boards when they first created the TID district.
So, but that third column says it was a 2022 amendment. So when I read this without you explaining it to me, I would have thought that you would have expanded or prolonged the TID. And that's why we saw the cumulative value change. What was it actually? What happened?
That's a good question. I forget off the top of my head. It could have been just a project cost amendment. There could have been some development that came up that they weren't anticipating, and there could be some additional project costs to incentivize the development to come, which then when it did come, it produced more than what they had originally anticipated.
And that had nothing to do with the statewide valuation process. I mean, did that impact these numbers? Because just thinking about our own case, our valuation changed dramatically around that time. Or was there some other action that happened?
It probably a combination of both. I mean, we've seen a lot of inflation increment just in that self, but looking at this, there was definitely a new development that occurred in that TID that wasn't expected.
So the reason I asked the question is, when we think about these things as a committee and are making recommendations to our board, it's sometimes difficult when you're in the moment to separate the one-offs from the strategic changes or trend line changes. And, I look back at our Baird analysis of valuations. I had them in my files from presentation that Adam had done. And you guys take a pretty consistent look at growth where you expect growth in and around the range of inflation every year. But when we have an action like the revaluation, or if we would have a significant recession, there's not much variability planned into that growth rate. And the question becomes, is that an opportunity or is that trouble for the village? And are there triggers we have to maybe flip to make sure we take advantage of good times and avoid negative consequences if we're gonna see a decrease in the valuation. How does Baird look at that? And how does your consulting service provide insight so that we can make decisions?
Yeah, I mean, just like everyone around the state, I mean, we're definitely never going to guess on when a recession is going to occur and try to build that into a model, because I mean they've been calling for a recession here for many years now, and growth has been pretty significant over the last several years in the same point. So what we'll typically do is look at the last 20 years, and we look at equalized. We don't look at assessed. We look at equalized because that's the fair market value of the properties. So the reassessments and stuff like that just gets you back up to the fair market value. So we use the equalized TID out numbers and we take a look at how much have you been growing over the last 20 years. We look at TID in and same thing. It's pretty consistent, pretty normal between the two. And the village has been growing more than say 2% per year, but we'll use a conservative growth rate of say 2% for our numbers, just for planning purposes. Now, if you grow more, well, then obviously like your tax rate is lower, your value to be able to borrow just goes up as you pay down your debts. So, you know, you did have a period where, you know, the growth of the community wasn't significant. You know, we're thinking 2017, 18, around that time. But then in the last several years, you've been growing pretty substantially, just like everyone in the state.
And that's kind of my drill down. Have we grown, or is it just the advantage of inflation and revaluation?
And again, revaluation doesn't really play into the account of equalized value. But
Okay, that's a
inflation,
fair, that's a good point.
but inflation absolutely does. And we've seen, you know, everyone growing you know, around that 6 to 10% over the last several years. And a lot of it has to do with inflation. But, you know, at the same point, there has been a lot of development in the state as well. So it's kind of a play on both. But I would say, Mike, the majority has been probably inflation. I'm sure you've seen it in Sister Bay, just with home values going up.
Okay.
Justin, there is a data for new construction from DOR on a yearly basis, correct?
Correct. Yep. Net new construction. And, you know, I think that's the issue with the levy limits in Wisconsin is, you know, it allows you to increase your levy by the net new construction. And part of that net new construction includes development, new value. So that's why it's so important to continue to try to grow, because then it helps your operational side at the same point. And there's a lot of communities in the state that, you know, are running up against that because they're only net new constructions, you know, 1 or 2%, but their insurance costs and everything are going up, you know, 8 to 10% plus, and staff. And so it's a challenge for a lot of communities. But yes, Vlad, net new construction is an important factor to look at.
Anybody have anything else? Somebody will care to make a motion?
Well, can I just ask one more question? I'm sorry. So basically, this deck that you're showing us here is the service you would provide for TID 1 and TID 2 in Sister Bay. And how much would that cost us for each one?
$12.50.
Yep, 1,250.
So 1,250 per each one. And you would get that done and present it to us when?
Hopefully over the next couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just, thank you. Before we make a motion, I guess my thoughts are, it's not a lot of money. We are going to be transition, losing a very experienced person in Denise from our committee. We have a lot of new people around. I get questions on TID from neighbors all the time. I would like to understand it a bit better. And if this packet that they can create for $3,500 gives us easily accessible information, allows us to ask some questions and to get to know the data a little bit better, I would suggest that it's a good thing to do, especially if the staff's asking for this help. Would be my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And, one thing that, I would like to see potentially added, so sort of to your point, so if someone comes up and asks, one of us, what is the benefit of TID, right? We're able to clearly explain that to a taxpayer, right? So, the example from Freedom covers a lot of different high level, growth and, ways that the TID can operate, but, from an individual taxpayer perspective, one, how does it impact your taxes? In our situation, what happens in, 3 years when TID 1 is done, basically, right? Because all that money comes back. What does all that money mean? How does it can impact the, the current levy rate or whatever it is, right? So just, that's, I'd sort of like to see more of a, individual type of, overview of what it would cover.
So I'll make a motion to accept the consulting agreement from Baird for, I'll call this, what's the name of what they're gonna do? For the 2 existing TIDs at a price of $1,250 per TID. Motion by Hausen, second by White. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Swam and aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Justin and Jennifer.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, 6B, tax incremental financing policy.
All right, so this agenda item is a follow-up from last month, and last month, I'll call it the base TID policy was presented to the Finance Committee. There was an opportunity to provide comments. So Denise provided comments and Mike provided comments. Both of those were incorporated into proposed policies that were included as part of the packet. And essentially what the objective of this agenda item is to keep the conversation going and to continue to clarify what the overall policy should be for the tax incremental financing district assistance policy. So I can definitely answer any questions about either one of the comments, or individuals can also answer any questions.
I like Denise's comments more than I like my own comments. I appreciate that you had mine there. And
That's funny. I thought you had some good comments.
Well, I didn't know if there was ever a version where the couple of good ones I had were added to Denise's, but if that's where we're headed, I'm pretty good with this. I think the part that I liked the most, Denise, was the part where you basically kind of frame this up around housing or specific initiatives of the village. You made that point in the last meeting. It sunk in with me. I think that that's very important. And then it kind of mitigates the risk in and of itself, because you're only offering this to an area strategy that's important to the village.
Right.
So I don't know that we want to go through every line, but I thought we're pretty darn close here.
I don't want to go through every line either, but the for test is still in here, which I think we talked about. If we do only focus on housing and infrastructure or sewer and water, utilities, whatever, the for needs to go away in all places.
Isn't that part of Wisconsin statute though? Don't we have to include it?
That's what I thought.
I mean, I think there, and I might be wrong, and this might be an attorney question. I think there's some gray area in the but-for test, like you can complete this project, or I would not be able to complete this project but for this extra money. Or I would not be able to complete this project to these specifications that the village is hoping for, but for this money. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
So I feel like, I think you have to include it unless I'm wrong, but there's still gray area that would allow us to grant money. If we were wanting these developers to do something specific and they couldn't do it that way unless we provided assistance.
So if it was not included in the policy, and again, I agree with you, not a legal stance, not anything that I can provide for that. But in terms of the but-for test, it's covered by Wisconsin state statute, so if it wasn't included in the policy, automatically it would have to be something that would be considered as per the definition. I think that's where what language would be included as part of it. That's what I would recommend, is what specific language would meet that criteria for the village. Typically, if we're talking about it at the base value of what it is, this development would not occur but for the use of TID funds, or using that in a sentence to essentially state it that, you know, based on the specific project.
I would ask for a legal opinion on that.
I agree.
I think that's fair, and especially if we end up having a third party look at these and evaluate whether they pass or not. I know that came up at one point. I think they would want us to be extremely specific on what we have as a threshold for our, but, or, you know.
So I was, I'm glad, Mike, that you think that we're close, because I think we're a long way away.
Okay,
And the reason that I say that is it's the layout. I don't think that, some of the other ones were laid out much better, clear, concise. I liked the headings. I thought we should add a lot of things, you know, shuffle around how we present it, that this is a serious document. There were also, in my notes, I think it was,
Denise, is it the content or the layout or both that you believe? Because I have no problem, maybe we bring in
Both.
somebody who's written one of these before.
well, I think that's why we have an administrator, I mean.
It can be, you know, I have no problem with, this is just the base one, and based on the comments, just trying to do it. But I mean, it can be multiple versions, or if there's a preferred one that the layout's there.
I just, my note is that it's not laid out clearly enough. In my mind, and that there were other examples that explained
The ones we
exactly,
looked at originally, that
Yes.
you, yeah,
exactly how we. What the process is. It's very clear. This is the first time that, we're pursuing something like this. And of course, that there will be legal review at the end, but I mean, just for anybody who would want to review it. It just needs to be stated as clearly as possible on what the process is, what the criteria is. I just think that there were a lot more paragraphs in some of the other ones explaining things that I thought
were helpful.
would be helpful to the person reading it, to filling it out. Also, McFarland had a really great application. We don't have an application. I thought that would have been incorporated into this one.
So the reason why there's not an application is if the policy is not, the end version is, it's just gonna be a lot of moving around, and what the final application is depending on the content.
Okay. And then Oregon had a cost reimbursement agreement, and that's what they called it, and it's kind of like a pre-development agreement. Because it says in our document that, you know, if they sign a development agreement, they're signing up for all of, you know, the fees that we get to charge back to them. I really liked a pre-development agreement or a cost reimbursement agreement. It was only a couple of pages, that just says what those costs are up front,
Mhm.
instead of, because a development agreement you get to at the end. So this comes before, and everybody's kind of on the same page, knowing what any costs would be charged back to them.
That was one of my first questions, was for third-party review costs, what do those include? Do we have to provide an estimate to the person submitting the application, and do they need to sign off on that before we get after it?
I think,
If I were developing, I would want to know.
right, a
exactly
hard,
what I'm paying for.
pretty hard number.
Mhm.
So I'm just repeating what I heard, so correct me. Upfront, this pre-agreement that would be signed by a potential developer to allow the investigation of whether or not we have a viable project here that's consistent with whatever our policy becomes. That's one thing you're asking for. I agree with that. The second thing I hear you asking for is a little bit more definition in the attributes of the agreement itself. And if the state of Washington or the state of Oregon, I can't remember which one you said, if there's a template there that we can direct staff to you as a baseline, I'm fine with that. The only thing I would suggest there is there may be some stuff pulled out of that because of the way we potentially would limit our scope to housing.
Correct.
So, I mean, those two
Yeah, there's
things.
a lot of things that wouldn't apply.
Yeah, and then the third step, leading that into the actual application form, that seems like a pretty good way to do it from a developer perspective. We're giving them, hey, here's what you're gonna have to do if you want to be investigated, here's the policy, and then here's the application form. Those are the three pieces.
And then the development agreement.
And oh, at the end. Andy?
What does housing entail? Wow, like as we talk about,
It wasn't limited exclusively to housing, but it was, Denise had a good definition in here. I gotta find the page it's on though.
I think we took out the word attainable.
yeah,
And I think we had workforce housing, but I also had a note in there that we should have the conversation about housing stock. Because housing stock is important also. It may not necessarily be workforce housing, but it's housing stock because we're not having a lot of turnover, or what turnover we are having is priced so high that it's
right, can't narrow it down to just one specific.
right. So I thought that there maybe should be a combination of workforce housing and housing stock. Now, what the true definition of housing stock is, I don't know. I didn't go down that rabbit hole, but I thought that we should talk about that and what we would think.
Yeah, because with that general term, and then I think, you know, it was also housing and infrastructure, right? So does the infrastructure support housing, or are they two separate things, or does, you know, is there a separate infrastructure under the housing piece of it? Or, and then there's infrastructure for commercial, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, you know, I think we need to define. What does housing? You know, what parts of housing would we consider
Right.
funding? And, yeah, you know, and we also don't wanna just limit. You know, I guess if we keep the infrastructure piece in, we could use that for commercial developments,
Sure.
right, and that kind of thing, right? So it's, I think defining housing and then definitely keeping infrastructure to
I
promote
mean, infrastructure just
all
covers
development
all
within the zones,
in
right?
places where obviously there isn't any sewer and water.
Yeah.
or-
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Based on the last conversation, it was essentially, instead of providing, you know, a direct benefit through cash, is that the improvements themselves are what the incentive is for the developer, is that essentially by expanding the roadway, expanding utilities,
Yeah,
you know, putting in the necessary infrastructure in order for the housing or any other development project to exist. That's the development incentive.
yeah. that was the main things that I sort of saw and sort of
So
questioned around.
Denise, when you say housing stock, you're talking stock or inventory, right? So
Yes.
you mean, in theory, if we have more of a certain value range of homes available, it's less likely that we're gonna have a shortage, therefore hopefully the price is staying down a little bit. Is that the theory, Mike? I mean, in
Well, it can
theory,
be one theory.
yeah.
I'm sure there's many.
Well, the other one I wanted to go to is, do we put deed restrictions or some sort of hook to ensure? I think I like the term attainable housing, but do we need to do something like that to make sure it happens? Because the fear you kind of have with making this available is we'll make it available and we won't accomplish the goal, right? Because it'll be a little too pricey for the people who would like to live there, and it ends up going on the open market and it sells and it's at a higher price.
Or it will be successful for the first buyers.
Yeah, but then after that.
And then
goes up.
after that, it hits the open market. And now you have, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer or anything, but I'm just gonna use it as an example, you know, then somebody can buy it as a second home and
Right.
you've lost your neighborhood or whatever, because it's another house now
Yeah.
that's been gobbled up by. Yes, somebody owns it, they're maybe here part-time, but
Yeah.
that has never been the intent. In, you know, the 20-some years we've been talking about housing in the village. Now, we cannot put deed restrictions on anything that obviously the village doesn't own the property. Do you put something in your wording that if you want TIF funds, there has to be a model or something? Possibly. It all depends on what the committee, what the board, what the village as a whole would deem important.
Yeah, I think, at least in my mind, the reason we headed down this path was to try and create more attainable housing. And that's a question I still have, even if we implement a policy close to the limitations that we put on it as we have proposed here. We're gonna fine tune it. We're gonna make it a little better. But I still am a little nervous, the way it is right now, Ben, that the market would take over and these places are gonna be valued at a level most people don't consider attainable. That's my fear. And I don't know exactly how to fix that.
It's challenging
Yeah, we don't know.
to protect what you're trying to build for the future.
I mean, I think an easy first step, it wouldn't solve all the problems, but an easier first step would be saying, if you're gonna accept money for this from the TID, you have to have a no short-term rental policy. That will keep people from buying them in order to turn around and make.
Rent
them.
Can
I
we-
think you would eliminate half of your people looking.
Now, you can do that, right? Because didn't we do that with the houses by
Other
Pebble
developments
Beach?
do it all the time.
The Pebble Beach development? I don't think those folks can't rent those places.
Pebble Beach.
Yes,
Across-
the old, Fred and Fuzzy.
Oh.
Across the street from where it was, yeah.
Condo development.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
garden homes or whatever they call it.
Right. I don't know if you can do it when you sell individual homes, unless they're part of an association and the land is still owned by the person who sold. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it is like a condo association.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the rules are different.
Yeah, I think you can put her on private property, right? Like
Well,
in
if you-
certain areas.
I don't know, if you sell the property is then completely out of the person's hands who sold it, and it's now only under the jurisdiction of the village it sits in.
Yes, Mary?
It is in our developer agreement that we don't have short-term rentals. So I know that we're kind of doing it backwards from what you guys are proposing, not doing the sale first and then the developer agreement, but as it stands for us, it's in our developer, I think it's 4 months.
Yes.
And you guys would still, just as a reference point, you guys would still own the land, you would sell the buildings as like a condo.
It's litigation.
Okay, that's the question. Okay, thank you.
So they would each. They would have their own rules and regulations then on what can happen in their HOA.
So just didn't, and I don't. The Cherrywood, the houses over here, is it Cherrywood or what do we call
One of the streets.
one of the streets? Where they had originally some level of deed restrictions, but they never fully had their HOA.
I don't think they ever had deed restrictions there.
Well, if you ask some of those owners,
Some of the first owners.
they had restrictions.
So there's an association then?
There,
Well,
What-
there was once.
where I'm trying, I think if you don't maintain a homeowner association, and I don't know what the rules are about maintaining them, and maybe that's something we could put into our policy. That a homeowners association is required and that it has to be maintained for 20 years or some limitation like that. If that's allowable, might be something we want to do, because some of the people in that area would say they bought thinking that they had some protection. And they didn't, because at the end of the day, they never took the actions necessary to have a legal entity in place to protect themselves based on the original deed agreements they agreed to that were not written into the village ordinances, as I understand it.
Well, they would not be written into it.
Yeah, they wouldn't be. The HOA is
It wouldn't be an
outside.
ordinance anyway, it's on them to keep their HOA going.
Our condo is qualifies from STR by pretty much by 2 lines. Zoning from the village and bylaws from HOAs.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously that doesn't take care of the problem if somebody buys it and a year later they sell
Correct.
it.
Right.
And
It
then
doesn't,
you still wouldn't short-term rent it, but they can sell it more at market price than.
Yeah.
You know, so it only takes care of half of the.
Right.
So it seems we're at a spot here where we want to, help me here, Denise, we want to direct staff to do an update kind of consistent with the framework you provided. So that at the next committee meeting, we can look at a pre-application. Well, we'll be able to put together a pre-application and an application based on the proposed final policy, which would maybe be slanted more toward the earlier recommendation you had made toward the Oregon format, but with the comments and some of the red lines that were made in the documents that we had. Is that?
Yeah, I think, and then we need a legal opinion on the but-for. One of the
It
things.
has to be done in order to finish it.
Right. One of the things that didn't make it in here is we didn't have a conflict of interest that was in quite a few of these. And if they're in there, I think they're in there for a reason. And I think that needs to be added. And I think the whole review process, I took a lot of notes on what was on page, starting at the bottom, page 54 and 55. I think the review process has to be revamped a lot. I don't think that an applicant just meets with village staff. I think it should also meet with the plan commission chair, or that's my opinion. You guys can make that determination. I think then there's referrals to the plan commission for site and plan review, which isn't necessarily laid out in here. I did talk about the pre-development agreement. So I wrote down under review process, look at Dane County's application procedure number 8. So whatever that was in Dane's. Number 8, I thought was a really good layout. I think there's some really good ones that just define it, explain it. direct better. And we should, you know, want to do the best that we possibly
Yeah.
can.
Sorry, going back to the housing piece, is this an opportunity for us to potentially put in like incentives that, you know, to your point, promote certain types of housing development where, you know, I'm just throwing out example, you know, hypotheticals, right? So, you know, if you are doing the development and you have 30% of your development as a, you know, capped in a deed, if you put 30% of your development in a deed to cap those prices, we will provide an additional incentive through the TIF beyond what a normal housing development will get, right, to promote, you know, things that we think are being better interest in the town and could potentially benefit the developer as well too, by receiving more of that.
We had worked on something that's not related to TIDS, but at Plan Commission, if some developers did certain things with housing, they could have more density, so that the zoning code would be a little bit more pliable, so that they could build all the housing that they wanted, but it was still giving us some that the village was looking for also. And so I think that there's all kinds of things. I mean, you can really go down a rabbit hole on what carrots you want to dangle out there to promote this. I also think too, and density, you know, maybe density is one of them. I think that we should, if it comes to housing or infrastructure, we should be giving 75%, 80% of that money back. I don't think it should be anything lower than that. It's just
TID reimbursement?
a flat rate.
So
You must be
80% of
hearing that
the
wrong.
Yeah,
increment that would be received for the specific project.
Yes,
Because in every other area in here, it caps it between 15 and 25%.
but that's at the total project cost,
And you're talking,
Well-
whatever it brings in.
So as per this one, it would be for the generated increment, for this policy, it'd be 75% is what is currently capped at for any increment that.
oh, I see. No more than 75.
Cause I think that's, if housing and infrastructure is important to us, then I mean, I don't think it should be on any sliding scale. It's just 75%.
So using a pay-as-you-go. And assuming the developers incurred, you know, let's just use a round number, $170 or $100,000. I'm just using that to make the math easy. We're saying that they could recoup up to 750 or 775,000 of that. If they hit their hurdle rates in the development agreement. And we were on the pay-as-you-go schedule. I mean, they only get paid if the valuations go up and they execute.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any.
at the same time, if you're a developer, the reason why you're coming to look for TIF funding is to help with initial project costs, to get the project off the ground to begin with, right? So, you know, pay as you go doesn't really help with that piece of it, you know? Cause that's all after the fact, from my knowledge, is when you have pay as you go, so the developer puts the entire upfront cost of everything. With no help from the village until after it's done,
Right.
right? And sure, it does reduce our risk and, you know, spread things out, but it also doesn't. Do a great job of promoting development within the TIF.
And
in
I
my
think
opinion.
that was something that Nick had brought up at our last couple of meetings, is that, you know, if he has to. And I don't really like using Nick and Mary as examples, because we're talking about this as a broad,
Right.
you know, a broad policy, but it is right in front of us. That, you know, they'll have to borrow that money. They'll have to pay interest on that money for, you know, what length of time. Before they ever see $1, and that is one of the things that I have brought up before. is that, and depending upon how you look at it, some may say that it worked out and some may not. When the village put in all the infrastructure up in those lots, those 13 lots, that Keith Garrett was supposed to develop, and he went bankrupt. We got stuck with Bill, the village. And then we sold 10 of those 13 lots to the housing partnership for 10,000 each. You can do that too.
Yeah, which limits your risk because those lots are now more valuable because they have the infrastructure in place. So in theory, you could, in the village would be making up that initial.
You know, but
outlay.
that's more negotiations, more, village has to be first right of refusal if we're putting in the infrastructure to these lots, blah, blah, blah. It's just a whole nother legal and financial layer. Not saying good or bad. just
Yeah.
What it is.
And normally I would agree with you guys, but I mean, they had a developer come in and present. And he stated, I thought pretty clearly that the pay-as-you-go method has been working pretty well for them and has worked for a lot of
That's because
villages in the past.
Almost everybody does it because of the risk.
Right, and I don't
Sister Bay
disagree.
tends to be a little outlier sometimes.
I just think that our tax base isn't so huge that we can take on a huge development risk. I would be way more comfortable with a pay-as-you-go signing off on that than I would ever be with an upfront payout with the plans of repayment. Personally.
Yeah, no, I agree too. Yeah, I totally agree. So just be having, yeah.
With the pay-as-you-go, can the developer, I can't remember what's in the rules. Can the developer claim not only their cost to install the infrastructure or whatever we're funding, but also can they include their borrowing costs in that?
I believe so,
I thought they could.
the way I read it.
So it's more, that was what I thought too, Denise, but I wasn't sure. So the theory is, who's got the upfront risk and who needs the money upfront? I think the cost is still gonna be absorbed by the TID when the payment is made later or the qualifying expense. Right, because not everything the developer is doing is gonna be covered by the incentive, only
Right.
the things that are agreed to or allowed by statute.
Right.
Well, and if I'm a developer and I'm doing a huge housing development, I'm probably staging it over 5 years. I'm probably pre-selling my homes before they're even built, actual plans. So if it's all working right, I have money coming in within the same year that many of these larger infrastructure bills have started. And I wouldn't say only, but you're trying to only take on the risk of the first year or two of interest before you've got money coming in to help pay those down right away.
So just to clarify as well, it would be based off of the assessed value year. So the year that it'd be assessed, that's when the money would be received. And then you'd be looking at having it be paid out based on the percentage or whatever is included as part of the development agreement. So when it's staged, it really is about the assessment that's coming in. So that money's coming in, you give out a portion of it based on the percentage, and then it keeps on going based off of what it is. And it also would be included as part of the policy in the development agreement that it couldn't exceed what the life of the TID would be. So it wouldn't be collecting, incrementing, can't be paid out because it is based off the life of the TID.
So for assessed value, that value only includes a house that's there, not one that's mid-built.
Every year on
Right.
December 31st, there is a value to everything, no matter what stage it is.
Okay.
So if there's a basement,
Mhm.
and that's it, you're assessed on the
That's-
basement, okay?
okay.
If you have a shell, you're based on that. If you have an occupancy permit, obviously you can live in it and it's the whole structure. So whatever is there on December 31st is
even if
the
you-
assessment.
If you sell the house and it's not built yet, you have that income, but you're not paying the taxes on that build until it's actually sitting there. That's
Well,
kind of
It also depends, typically it's also the milestones as well that are built into it, so it actually would need to be, you know, like a. Have the occupancy permit, for example, for the home, have it be assessed, have the occupancy permit. And that's when, you know, those criteria are met, that it's livable, assessed value, and then the increment gets paid out for that year.
And to Denise's point, there's a number at the end of each year, so that would include infrastructure too, right? So a lot this year without sewer and water hookup is worth less than next year when the sewer and water is available, right? The property piece of it.
Well, it includes any developments that are beyond what the base value of that parcel is. So essentially, if there are any improvements either to the land or to the developments, that would be captured. So for example, that there is additional access for laterals that would go into it, like that might increase what it is for the development.
Well, I was making it simpler. If I buy the lot today and it doesn't have access to sewer and water, I have to put a well on it and a septic system, that's got one value. If next year I have access to sewer and water because the line goes across my frontage, that's gonna be a more valuable lot.
Yeah, I mean, it depends when it's reassessed. So I mean, when you have improvements to a lot.
Oh, so that might not be reassessed every year.
I mean, it just depends, like there is
Okay.
an ongoing, there are certain things that kick in when it's reassessed, and there's a bill-wide reassessment that sometimes occurs as well. But it just depends on when that assessment kicks in.
Which I think I keep saying, we're having a reassessment this year. Mhm. Which is that's because we grew so much and fell below
The hurdle.
the 80%.
We would have had it last year, except they're behind schedule.
Right.
How many, is it every 5 years now or every, it doesn't matter?
There's nothing to do with that.
It just,
You
it's just
have
the
to have
math.
it, I think, every 4 or 5,
Okay,
no matter what, but if you fall below the 80%, you have to have it. So in places, you know, could have it every 2 years.
Well, thank you for Mike and Denise for going through this with a fine tooth comb. I liked all of your comments. I just had minor tiny things, but I would include, for the most part, both sets of red lines combined into one. A lot of times you guys touch on the exact same thing.
but I would agree with Denise, if there's a better format like the Oregon format, we should use it.
Oh, for sure.
And I think the biggest change that I saw,
Oregon.
or sorry, who did you say? I don't remember.
McFarland had a really good one.
Okay,
Well, Matt, I assumed that these ones were just for content at this point and
Yeah.
not format,
Right.
but as it gets more hammered down, I would think it would go into a. Yeah.
so McFarland is the one we're suggesting the staff to use as a template? Or a couple, or a couple?
Oh,
of
I
them?
did right. I did like Oregon's layout. It looked
I listened to
professional.
you say.
Yeah. I'm not listening to myself now.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, even. Yeah. I just think there's just some really good templates and kind of
Yep.
all of them to utilize to make ours better and complete and. I know it will get tweaked and amended as it gets worked with or whatever, but let's really try to give it our best shot and out of the gate.
Denise, just, do you remember the area that you mentioned, like when you were referring to deeded housing, where that was at? Like, or the prospect of having deeds. These
Deed restrictions?
deed restrictions getting
We can do that if it's village-owned property.
village owned property, okay.
Yes.
So if we have a land donation, for example, and deeding the property, there can be additional restrictions that are made based on the deed that's
Okay.
there, but we can't say to somebody based on the agreement necessarily that there's any deed restrictions that can be applied to it in lieu of funds.
Okay, I was just thinking through the previous conversation around having deeded, or deed restrictions within the TIF or, like capped or, like affordable housing within the TIF may not be beneficial for the TIF because it slows down the payback and limits the property value increase, which is all about, you
Yeah.
know.
It'll catch up. Because I think Bridget brought that
I
up
made the
too.
same point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
you want to have it in the TIF, you really do.
But going back to the decision we made earlier with Baird, if the board would change the scope of its EID to make sure that attainable housing is one of the objectives, we could have Baird do their analysis and actually take us through what the levy impact
I
would
think
be,
it's super important.
and we'd be able to model that.
And we have the Devleys as an example, they
Yeah.
have shared numbers with us, so.
Yeah.
And one more thing, the TID one is due or is up,
So
was it?
it's beyond the expenditure period. So
Okay.
essentially, no more funds can be expended as part of it, but it continues to gather increment. And then at the end of its life, if the affordable housing extension, if there was interest in utilizing that, it could be used for that purpose. Or, for example, if TID number 2 was underperforming, there could be a TID transfer from TID number 1 to TID number 2.
Okay, I just bring that up because 4 years isn't that far away, right? And if there's no funding left available for that now, you know, or whatever, then our focus should really be on TID 2, because can't do anything with TID 1 because where we're at, then why put the energy and the
Right.
resources into it? It should be figuring out what's next
Yeah.
for that piece, so.
And again, the board members here probably know this better than me, but from what I thought I saw, we are running favorably in TID 1. And that should be a good news story for the village taxpayers. Am I wrong on that? I thought TID was the one that we were a little negative
Yeah, I
on.
was thinking about the same thing, because if we want to present this to all of our taxpayers, we should be able to tell them, well, in 4 years, here's what's gonna happen.
Right.
When TID 1 comes back,
Right,
right? There should be a calculation that's out there based on the projected value in 4 years. Your tax rate, or
right.
mill rate will be this much lower than what it is today.
So, yeah, it would be.
Never say that.
Yeah, well,
Trust me,
So
yeah, or whatever.
You
Yeah,
might want to bank the money, your bet taxes might not go up, you might choose to do something different with that money that you're not going to tax. Your
Right.
residents for, I mean, there's a whole scope of. Things that can happen, so you,
but it shouldn't hurt.
correct,
I mean, that
Yeah,
may be,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not,
I'll
hey, look,
rephrase,
this looks like it
yeah.
worked out pretty good for us. Look how it performed. Yeah, it was a little tough in the beginning and during difficult financial times, but it really worked, not only for the strategic reasons that the board many years ago decided to do this, but the numbers work.
Mhm.
And that, you're right, we should be telling people that before we get to the end of the game, especially as we're asking them to trust that we're gonna make good decisions in TID 2.
You're right. Mhm.
Or as the board would make decisions, I should say.
so Ben, do you have clear direction on what this committee was asking for in your notes?
yep, so we could just change up the base policy based on some of the other examples, specifically from McFarland, some of the items from Oregon, the review process from Dane. There's a few different research items that we're talking about. And then, yeah, generally incorporating what was previously discussed into those models as well. So I think that
The
overall,
legal opinion,
The legal.
for the but-for, yeah, I did include that as part of this as well. I guess in terms of the clarification for but-for, is the aim to see how simplified the but-for version can get, or is there specifically for the language that's included?
Yeah.
Confirm that's
first of all,
appropriate?
because it's the statutes, do we absolutely have to have it? That's question number one, that's a. Yes or no answer, and then, because we want to encourage certain kind of, we don't want the but.
You don't want it to be limiting.
Right. We want to see what we want to see happen with these funds. And how do we do that if we have to have the but for in there? And that might. I don't know if we look outside of Randy Nesbitt.
Yeah.
for a legal opinion on a TID wording, that's up to staff, I guess.
Okay.
Anything else from the committee or we'll move on?
Well, the only other thing would be as we get more clarity on the new legislation around housing TIDs, we should make sure we understand that. Maybe that's a second action item. If you think it impacts this policy, we should know, but if it doesn't, that's gonna be something this committee should understand.
Well, I feel like Barrett will include that in their reports that they do.
Yeah.
I would hope, well, that we've asked them directly.
So they sent some initial communication today, it's essentially indicating that it was executed, but it's more than likely gonna have its own, what they refer to as an implementation handbook, because it's not like any of the other TIDs that are currently offered to any municipality, so it will, like they said, probably take a little bit for the DOR staff to implement what that actually means of what is needed when a new TID is created. And then when we're talking about the overlap, that's a different thing as well, where technically any new TID is not going to take in any increment until the other TID is done or removed from that area. It's only active during the overlap when the other TID is created.
And
Or excuse me, when the life cycle's done.
is that %3 versus 12, is that based on the levy valuation or,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah, so
So
essentially,
you could manipulate that to identify a new TID that's equal to or less than the 3% if there were real advantages for it.
yeah, and I mean, ideally it'd be in a different area.
Right, like
Or it
I,
would be scaled back.
I'm thinking about our original thoughts about the affordable housing on the village-owned property.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, that's
yeah.
something that should be a
Yeah.
conversation, because we tried to do that a few years ago and realized we were over the 12%.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I apologize, I have to.
Okay, so
Good conversation.
in the notes, we directed staff to do that.
We're gonna be here, so you better make sure.
I will.
Okay. All right, 60s municipal reimbursement fund, proposed parks projects. I'm still confused.
Yeah,
So, I am too, because I just looked at the numbers. I mean, Sister Bay in 2023, we were up 11% in room tax, and 24, we were up 6.6%, and 25, we were up almost 6%. And it's given 2 years in arrears, so if this is money we received in 25, it's off of room tax in 23. I don't know why, but they've never changed that. Anyway,
That's always
well,
been above.
Vlad has an answer for that.
but it's 20, if it's 26, Vlad,
So
it would become off of 24 room tax.
the way it was presented back in the days, it's actually
Yeah,
different. So I reached out and I talked with finance director from the destination, the county.
oh, good, okay,
So here's what's going on.
yeah,
Every January, so the County Tourism Zone Commission, they work on their budget, and then by the end of the year, when the budget is finalized, they shuffling around their finances and they see what they need. Then, based on their needs, they requesting the
What the
payment
tourism zone needs.
from municipalities.
Yeah.
And that's when municipality, we receiving invoices,
mhm,
and we pay to the county tourism zone commission. Then from tourism zone commission,
Yeah.
they send in a note to destination, the
Yeah.
county, destination, the county. Send
reimburses
back
us.
the same, like a
Yeah,
mirror.
so it's a big
number.
circle, because it's illegal, actually.
So the amount is not actually based on room tax. It's based on the budget, needs of the budget of the county tourism zone commission. That's how much
Okay.
money they need for the year to operate.
I always thought
Sometimes
I always
they're-
thought they took a straight 4%.
Say it again.
I always thought they took a straight 4% of the 70% that DDC gets.
That could be, but sometimes they're not using everything and it rolls over into the next year and they
Yep.
use in reserves.
Yep,
They still like financially structuring them for the year
okay,
based on what they have on hand.
yep,
So
okay,
it just happened this year. It's not gonna be the same next year.
uh-huh,
The next year they maybe request even more or less.
and this is for 26, right, not 25?
Correct, 26 was
26.
$42,000, 25 was $65,000. Yeah, we kind of noticed an increase and then like drop. Just because
Uh-huh.
they saved up so much cash, unused cash, they decided to use for their budget.
Okay, did you confirm this with Juliana?
No, I confirmed this with
Yvonne? Okay. All right, I mean, Juliana's the one that manages that budget too, because she's the DCTV.
To be honest, it's so hard to read Juliana. I tried like.
It
many
is
times.
hard, it can be hard to get her, I know, okay. All right, I thought it was a straight 4% no matter what, but that might have changed. So 4% of the 70%, so weird, of the 70%, so really DEC gets 66%, it's very convoluted, don't even, the whole.
I was there at the beginning, I don't know.
But that's why I thought it was a straight 4, because when I was calculating, I'm like, this looks weird. Okay,
But I thought when we raised it to 8 and we restructured
Yep.
things, that all went away.
it
Or part of it went away.
yeah, it went away to the extent that, first of all, it was illegal.
Right.
So then in order to make it legal, DDC had to reimburse us because municipalities were giving money to DCTZ. No can do, right? So that's why they reimbursed us. They were reimbursing us. The question is how much, based on what, you know?
Based on this.
I didn't know it was-
Requests.
Based on their request, basically their budget.
Yeah,
Like
whatever needs for the.
I didn't know that. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna ask this simple question. Who collects this room tax?
Door
DCTZ,
County
tourism
Tourism
zone.
Commission.
Door County Tourism Zone Commission, they
They
collect
collect it
the
all.
tax, okay, so all of these hotels and all of our Airbnbs, they send them this money.
Yep.
Okay, and let's say it's $1 million.
Mhm.
What you just described, Denise, or excuse me, Louise, is that where does all the money go?
30% goes to the municipalities based on their percent to the total room tax charged, collected.
Okay,
Sister Bay is 11.9% of, right now, I haven't seen
Okay.
the 2025 numbers yet, but it's close, we didn't lose share.
so 30% of what they
30% goes
collect,
to the municipalities.
yeah,
Straight, they can use it for whatever they want.
okay, and that
Okay.
comes right into our general fund?
Yeah.
Does that come quarterly, once a year?
Every month, and it used to go into the debt service. We paid our like running debt
Yeah,
with well, it covered pretty much like a half plus minus of debt payments. Now it's redirected into capital improvement fund, which covers tourism related.
He's right, because it has to be tourism related. I misspoke. It must be on tourism related.
Is-
things. It's not hard to do in this.
The same as this money? Or you're talking about in addition to
This is
this?
different.
This
It's
is
not- okay.
specifically a carve out of where we're essentially getting, we have this as a revenue line and an expenditure line, so it's not real, we're
They're canceling
paying
each
it.
other out.
They're canceling each other out, but
But I'm
it's,
saying what we get from Door County Tourism Zone off of the room tax, that's not the same money as this money.
Correct. It's not-
Okay.
yeah, correct. I was
But
starting
that's-
at the higher level to
Lot.
figure out the pieces.
Yeah.
So you've got room taxes $1 million and Sister Bay gets 30%. Sister Bay gets 11.9%.
Of
Uh,
30%.
30%,
30%.
okay,
70% goes to Destination Door County. That is a state law. Because the municipalities for years have said they don't need that much, they shouldn't have it. That is a state statute, there is no way around it.
okay,
So
so that's,
then, in the meantime, just let me explain, in the
Okay.
meantime, we're one of the few people, one of the few entities in the state that have a tourism zone like we do. That works, that tracks every short-term rental, every lodging, everything. To make sure we're collecting the room tax we should be collecting, and they're very good. Somebody has to pay them to do that. And so it was illegal for, in the past, it would come directly from the municipalities to DCTZ, illegal. And so now it needs to come from room tax proceeds, which is basically coming from DDC.
okay,
That's how it goes.
so the 70% that DDC
Yes.
gets
Mhm.
in their operating budget, which I think Vlad was just explaining, no? they use their money to promote Door County.
Yeah.
And is any of that money redistributed anyway?
Yeah, Community Investment Fund.
Okay,
Community Investment Fund, I think, is now up to about, I think they've awarded close to 500,000, maybe more, I'm not sure, and in there, which they run through the Community Foundation, is probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 million, I'm not sure, that's high, that's probably.
so Louise, the reason for this question is I just saw a headline on the Advocate that we had record rentals in Door County this last year again.
We didn't, it wasn't a record.
Okay, that's what, I mean, I just saw that headline on
I
the
mean,
Advocate.
even though
Okay,
you want-
so they were down.
Far from a record.
That,
No, they weren't down, they were up, but it was far from a record. Yeah, we were up, low single digit.
I'm just trying to intuitively understand if the 70%. Why did our number go down if our rentals
Because the
were
way
up?
that they're determining the dollar amount based on DCTZ's budget,
Okay.
not on the same
Okay.
percentage that they determined it on before. That's
Okay.
why.
The
Okay.
actual collection of room tax money went up by
6%.
approximately
4%.
maybe $10,000,
Yeah.
plus minus.
Mhm.
Okay,
It was 550,000 the year of 2024, 2025, 560, plus minus.
okay,
So I'll get a hold of her. I'm gonna talk to Juliana, because there's an exec committee meeting on Wednesday that I can zoom in on and just ask her to clarify it for me. Because I should have known this and I didn't realize I based it on budget, which can work for or against it, just depends. But last year in room tax, in 25, yes, 25, the county collected about $12,800,000 in room tax. Sister Bay collected almost 2 million. And that compares to. Of course, they don't give me 24. I don't know these reports. Anyway, but the 30% so Sister Bay should have gotten in room tax, should be getting close to $600,000. That's the 30%.
okay.
Which has nothing to do, that 30% has nothing to do with this.
No. It's a different. It all
Different
comes from,
animal.
kind of comes from room tax, but yeah.
So what I'm still confused about is that in 2024, it says funds were committed to a sewer lateral stub for the concession stand addition, which we didn't build, but I'm presuming the stub went in. Did it?
Yeah, it went in.
I thought it
It's
did.
Oh, yeah. it for
But
sure
we're
went
talking
in.
by
Oh,
the,
yeah, that's when we did the
Yeah,
lab.
yeah, the lab, yeah.
Went in, because
Okay.
they were a little late.
Landscaping
because
along
it's
Mill
not-
Road, which
Yeah.
we did, but it died. And the remainder was to be set aside in a municipal tree fund. It doesn't give. I read Vlad's report. It doesn't say how much any particular one was. And then in 2025, we get to funds were committed to signage at Waterfront Park, which should read, the historical signage.
Yeah,
And we're not doing mounted binoculars, that went away. And how much did we, and it says approximately 10,300 was unspent. Well, how much did we spend on the waterfront signage in 2025? If we spent 55,000 in 2025? And why are we proposing more money for historical signage? We already paid for it last year.
So I do not
There's no
believe-
sense to any of this, and before we move on further, I just wanna say. You know how when you do a construction project, I think Vlad did this one for the Parks Maintenance Building. And you have a spreadsheet, which is separate from all your other accounting stuff. And every bill that you get or whatever has to do with that Parks Maintenance Building it is entered to the spreadsheet. So you know, because government accounting is convoluted, we all know that. You know, at the end of the project, exactly what you spent and where. Because this comes annually, because some projects are not getting done in the same year that we are allocating the money to, we need this on a spreadsheet that is constantly updated with, you know, years moving forward and defining what's happened since we started getting this money.
Yeah, if we're gonna carry the money forward that we didn't spend, I don't think we spent anything on signage yet.
There's a few things, so I mean, in terms of, so I guess how we got here is that, yes, there was not a spreadsheet that was tracking anything. There also wasn't a specific accounting code that was associated with this, so we have a revenue side code where we know that the money is coming in, but there was not a specific expenditure code that's gonna be tracking it, so as part of it, that would be looking to implement that as part of next year's budget and probably putting it in for this year as a separate code. And then, yes, also keeping a separate spreadsheet as well. So that's what made it so hard in terms of the funds, is that funds were spent off in different codes. And we know based off of, I guess, what was there previously for the historical information from the meetings about what the intention was for these, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it was spent on. So after asking Vlad to look into the numbers, we wouldn't be able to have a specific amount, but based off of what the best estimate is using a conservative side approach, it's a little bit over the $10,000 of what was unspent from previous years. And then the other thing that Vlad did let me know during his conversations was if 2026 funds or any years for that matter, if any municipal reimbursement funds are not spent, there is no penalty to having it be put into that account and tracked as a special fund to use for future years, as long as it's used for the purposes that the fund is intended to. So the tourism, you know, just generally what's included within that, as long as it's used for that purpose, it can be transferred over for a future year.
So, Vlad, did we write a check to the woman who was creating the historic signage?
Now that I know.
Then we can't only have 10,000 unspent in 2025.
I think it was moved around between other things that were not allocated by the committee.
I don't think that we should allocate 26 numbers until we know where all the money is.
Yeah,
And I don't know if we'd be able
Good
to
with doing
get
that.
the actual numbers because there wasn't proper tracking to do that at that time.
okay, but we probably know what we've received, right? We
So-
would have a record of what we've gotten in payments.
So the only thing we would be able to say for certain this year is that we have the $42,000
Gotcha,
that are available.
okay,
And then we could fund 2 of the 3 projects that would be intended to move forward.
okay. So,
And we know last year, I mean, I remember baseball season last year. That utility area was tore up. That project happened in 2025.
we sure did.
That sewer lateral. So my guess is that
Yeah.
the sewer lateral was paid for in 2025. We should be able to sign that bill or request it from the whoever would have billed it to us. I mean, I can call any company I've used in the past and be like, hey, you did a project for me in 2024. Can you send me that bill?
But
Am I
Because then we
right,
can
though?
see exactly what we paid. and
I
what-
got you, but Denise, am I right in remembering that at the time, the same people that were working on the Parks building did that? Remember?
Well, they had put the new
Yeah,
ladder or the
Yeah.
main or whatever.
so I wonder if, I mean, maybe they could pull it out, you know what I mean? Because then it was worked into what they were doing, which is probably the only reason, honestly.
That you
that-
agreed to it.
Well, yeah,
so we know that funds would be spent, but we don't know that it was spent for this specifically because there wasn't a code, wasn't a
Gotcha.
spreadsheet tracking it. So that's,
okay.
I'm not trying to, beat a dead horse about it, but we
I
just,
know, I
we wouldn't
understand.
be able to say for certain, we know that the
Okay.
project got done.
All right,
Well, let me ask this
Yeah,
then, why,
The historic, sorry, Mike,
Yeah,
but
go
the
ahead.
historical signage is pretty easy. We haven't cut a check.
We didn't pay for it. It wasn't done in 2020.
we haven't cut a check to Julie Hine yet, and she's the one that we've been cutting the checks to.
Right.
With the exception of the concrete pad and, that's it, right? Because she's working on the rest of it.
And if the sewer, and if the money didn't go to any of those things listed in the 2025 area. It means they went to the things listed in the 2024 area, because you wouldn't get a bill for a sewer lateral that didn't happen yet. So what did we buy in 2024 that we spent $50,000?
I bet if we, I mean, I'm happy to go back and look at some, meeting minutes of it, it's in there for parks.
I'm just curious, I know, I'm
Well,
sure
I-
very tough to find, but it's.
For one thing, we have to do what Denise just asked us for, is we gotta start tracking this more accurately.
But it's gonna be there, and I kind of
It's
think
there.
it'll be in the minutes.
We can find
What
it.
we did.
Okay, good.
It just takes a deeper dive. to
Yeah, I
find
mean,
it.
I don't mind going back and looking at that if you
And
want.
then I'm gonna ask a different question. It says 2026 this year, 42,000. Forget about all this other discussion.
Yep,
Wouldn't it be 42,000 plus the 10,300?
I think they say that
So
somewhere.
that's the estimate, that's what's included, so essentially what was included on the last staff report was just including the two projects, but if it's led to believe that there was 2025 unspent funds, that's included as part of the total revenue. And then if we take that as part of the expenses, it would
Okay,
be more than what we'd be looking at for covering the project.
So it means we have 52,000 to work with
52,000,
this year,
Right, which says, it's page 78.
it does say that.
which would be great for 2026. I am with you. I have such a hard time re-spending money on the same project that we spent it on last year, even though we didn't actually spend it on that. It would drive me crazy not knowing where that actually
What?
went.
Right, because even though there's no penalty,
Right, it still should go where we told people we were putting it.
correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, and I think that was that kind of that transition of where you started work and someone else left work, so.
I don't believe there was also like an ownership per
Right,
se of
Of who was
who,
keeping track. of it.
right.
Yeah,
So I mean, in terms of the funds, like, I mean, you know, most of these projects, I mean, all of these projects are Eric, but just the way our accounting system works, he wouldn't even have access for putting, like, entering the code for the specific fund that it is for the budget. We'd have to rework some things, and then it's also just if we have something like this,
We don't want anyone touching Vlad's.
yeah. Mhm.
Vlad should only be doing that. We
Yeah.
would never want to authorize a department head to.
I'm sorry, submitting and coding the
Oh, okay.
the actual invoices themselves. So ideally, the way that this would work, and again, I can't solve what was done in the past, but ideally, the way this would work is that we specifically have reimbursements for this fund. It's coded appropriately, probably sent to Sarah. We have a spreadsheet that includes this. We keep track of it. We put it towards a specific expenditure for a project that we're looking at. And we have different columns that are associated with it, and we have that tracking on the spreadsheet and on the code on an expenditure side. And that way, if we keep on collecting historical information, if we don't spend all the money within 1 year, we can safely assume that we have all the expenditures tracked so that it can be moved over safely for a future year.
So. I mean, I could go back and I think we spent the money in 24, because that stuff is done. I don't know what we spent, clearly more than 51.8, but we spent it. And then. I'm happy to go back and look at the minutes from, 23. Before my time, but
I mean, it's not a big deal if we postpone the decision for another month, is it?
No,
No, I don't think it's a big deal.
but I just want to
I
make,
think-
I'm sorry.
What have we talked about? We
I
talked about
think
the
some of
signage,
it
tree
is,
planting and gazebo.
yeah, I think some of it is somewhat time sensitive for Eric to keep on moving forward.
I
with-
think he can still keep moving forward.
He ordered the plants. I mean, sorry, the trees, those are ordered. Because at Parks, we said it was okay.
Yeah.
Cause I know we
Was-
talked to Ivan and ordered it.
It's just whether or not these funds are specifically allocated for those projects or if it comes out of the other.
I don't think it stops him from moving forward.
So that's good. I guess. If you look, we're gonna be talking about a minute, items to be placed on future agendas. Can we review this again where we get the best list possible for what we actually? What we got, 51, 8, 14, and 24, what did we actually spend it on? If we can't find that out, let's start in 25. When we had 65
And we have 10 grand
227.
left over.
with 10 grants, can we go through that list and then we'll make our approval decision on 26. But I would agree, we shouldn't approve 26 until we know.
Yeah, because we have
So,
folks for
Glad-
signage and tree planting.
Is there any, I mean, that's essentially what was done in the past, was just trying to look up what the past projects were and get what the estimates are. Is there any, I mean, is there any
Just
more?
as an example, in 2025, not pointing fingers, but some of the expenses were taken out from revenue side of the things, which is, that's how things were all over the place. And go figure.
So the importance here, though, I think Louise made the point earlier, is that these funds that we get, this 30%, right?
We get 30%.
We have to use it for a
Some sort of
specific,
tourism related something.
so that's why it's important for us to have this mechanism that tracks it, so we can say and articulate for anyone who asks it, that we spent our 56 or 65,000 or our 42,000 on these tourism related improvements to our village. That's what we have to be able to say, right? Do I get that right or no?
Yeah,
Okay. And right now, what you're telling me is some of this could have come out of general fund or been done. But we can't if someone asks us about the projects we did to improve tourism, we can't link the spending to those projects. We don't have
At the end of the day, every work that completed in Village of Sister Bay is tourism related, because it's a premier resort
Pretty
area.
much, yeah.
So every dollar spent can be justifiable.
Okay.
With their own taxes. Can I be like super honest, straightforward, black and
No,
white?
Vlad, we want you to lie. No,
We have two ongoing recurring operation designation with the Village of Sister Bay, SBAA and Ice Ring. So which
Yeah.
we committing funds for. This municipal reimbursement funds are headache, like big headache. So what I'm proposing, can we restream these funds and offset $52,000, either $52,000 from funding ice rink, or cover some of it for SBA. Therefore, it's gonna help with tax levy from another side, so which we're going to ask public for less money at the end.
So the only thing with that as well, Vlad and I talked about it, is that it depends on the perspective of how the fund should be utilized. So yes, it can cover an operating expenses, but I think somewhat in the spirit of what the funds are for as well, it's supposed to be making improvements as well and moving things forward for tourists. So that's and also a counter perspective as well, is that, you know, these funds could be utilized for improvements that would be pushing things forward that don't exist besides just what is currently going on for operations.
But both of the functions tourism related.
Both are available.
And SBA.
Yeah.
Just different
so
size.
this way, it's just whatever the dollar amount is, it just offsets the
Then
52,000 that were given to the ice rink. It's one transaction, it's done. And we just budget for anything else that we ever want to do related to parks or tourism or anything. And
if it's more, like, for example, receiving 65 offset 52 leftovers offset SBA, or vice versa.
I think the ice rink is a better thing to do than SBA.
And then.
In terms of really,
not
I
as
mean,
public fund.
Ben's right in terms of the spirit of what they meant. I think if we're gonna do it, ice rink is perfect.
But it just depends whether or not, like, it can be used for other funds to still do those things. It just depends whether or not it's actually gonna happen if there's not a dedicated fund. That'd be for it.
Yeah, my only hiccup with that, and accounting purposes, probably so much easier. The only thing, the benefit of doing this way is that historical signs, binoculars, extra trees, putting an addition on the gazebo. Would those have been things that we would have done anyways?
Would they still have it?
Or were those ideas come up with and thought of as great tourism improvements because we have this tourism fund of money that we're like, hey, let's think outside the box. What would be really great? And I mean, I guess if you're doing that too, you're doing projects that maybe aren't necessary. So I guess you can put it both ways, but I don't think some of these things might have been done if it wasn't
Mhm. No, it's a good
tourism
point.
fun. I don't know.
Yep.
The only counter I can give you to that, because I think you make a good point, is the biggest thing we're doing for tourism is the ice rink. And in
Yeah.
the simple, I love the simplification Vlad suggested. I like that.
Mhm.
I think we might have to get into a mindset around budgeting where we are thinking out of the box and improvements, and we are forward looking.
Mhm.
So, we would want to be doing the things that give the park in our parks and infrastructure improvements. Because that's, I mean, as a tourism community, if we aren't doing that, that's gonna hurt us in the long run. So I get you. I mean, if we have a budget and we're managing the budget, we should be doing it.
The other thing I think that we used this for was things that popped up. We didn't budget for.
Yeah.
That was something that I.
Because remember, honestly, this is a reimbursement for money we have already paid the DCTZ. This is not additional money.
Right, right.
So you're right,
Yeah.
it would need to be carved out upfront. And we don't have a tendency to do that. And a lot of human beings do not have a tendency to do, but when it comes up in this way, it's like, okay, let's use it for this. So in that respect, I know it's a pain for you, but I mean, you can change it up every year. You can do, like, for this particular year, we could do the ice rink because it's kind of perfect. But if we do, then how do we fund what's in line right now?
Well, what Vlad made me feel more comfortable about in this discussion is this is not so much an accounting concern about how we manage our books. It's more about understanding how we use the Door County, I want to use the right term here, the DCC reimbursement appropriately. And to Denise's point, you can't do that unless you're tracking what you spent versus what you plan to spend. Your suggestion was an improvement suggestion that we simplify the future use by using most of the allocation to cover an new ongoing expense we're gonna have for the ice rink.
Based on my conversation with Yuan, she said, those funds are yours. You can save them up for the future. But if you spend in them, it needs to be tourism related.
Tourism related.
And that's what I'm guiding toward, either ice rink or SBA, both of those functions, tourist related. And it doesn't contradict, even though it's part of the operational budget, but we choose to do so, include them in our operational budget.
Yeah. So let's say we did that, how do we pay the 42,000? I think that, how do we pay the money for historical signs, tree planting and gazebo improvements? Where does that come
It doesn't
from?
have to happen this year though. So it can.
Historical sign.
I mean, I'm not talking
No.
about.
Oh, sorry,
This-
we're talking about
this is
a plan for it in the future, gotcha.
It just
Sorry.
should be essentially
Because the signs have been
in
ordered.
the budget for next year.
Okay,
You
sorry.
know, that it'd be something where there'd be like an annotation
Right.
where this is the intention for it, maybe this wouldn't even need to be revisited,
Okay,
each year, it just would be baked
Okay.
into.
so we need to make a decision on that, all right, I understand. All right, so I will clarify with Juliana how this is, how our dollar amount is determined. And then, and provide that to the committee. And then, I guess, Vlad, if you just do a quick, easy for me to say, but recap of what was actually spent for 25. Hopefully that's not too hard. And 26, I know we've got quotes for all of this. And what that is gonna come to. And then we can move forward from there.
And then in the meantime, also still moving forward with these projects that are there, just unsure whether or not we're gonna be using these funds for them.
Correct.
I mean, the Parks Committee brought them forward because they thought they were important projects.
Okay. Let's move off of this.
Okay,
Matters to be placed on a future agenda. So. This being last item being one of them. Continue discussion on the new housing tip, meaning with Baird, with informing ourselves, having somebody talk to us, seeing what any criteria has happened yet. I know October seems a lifetime away, but it'll be fall fast before we. Anybody have anything else?
Okay, we talked about that when we talked about when you said, there were two pieces, right? We want to be able to review the modified TIF policy that we directed staff to work on. And then secondly, I thought you were making a second point that whether it's Baird or someone else, we should be, we're hoping at the next meeting, we're reviewing the paid consulting we just
He
authorized.
said it
from
might
Baird.
take him 2 months.
Okay, 2 months.
But that's in the future.
And then, but the other one is, we might go back and have Baird give us an update at the next staff meeting on the new legislation for the housing tips.
If they have
If
it,
they have it. Okay.
it might be too soon
Included
yet.
in the, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I can include generally what's included from the legislation and from.
I mean, I read the bill.
Yeah, there's also just, they provided a summary, and there's probably multiple consultants that provided a summary, but you're not gonna know specifically how it can be started until after DOR reviews it, but. They also wanna come back and they wanna do the TID 101 with the new composition of the finance committee as well, to provide education on how TIF works and generally, their services that they provide.
Okay.
So that would be more likely something they can control, so we would do that at the next meeting.
Generally, I would say maybe we would want to pair it with when they provide, they've done the TID overview services.
So you'd wait the 2 months so we can look at our own data while they're giving us the training.
I would say it might be a good opportunity for a real hands-on about.
Yeah, okay,
Here's the theory, here's what we're actually doing in practice.
okay.
So you think that Denise or Ben or both of you are likely to meet again in May? Middle of May?
Louise, I'm coming.
I know
Yeah.
that, but I'm just asking for a suggested time when we.
Well, I'm asking Ben, if most of this stuff is 2 months, should we be talking about a June meeting rather than a May meeting, or do we have a May meeting update? The
Yeah, I think
idea, I
we're
suppose.
probably gonna be talking about some capital improvement at that time as well. So I mean, I don't, unless there's a specific pending item.
I just want to get an
besides
idea.
the Municipal reimbursement.
Okay.
Like, yeah, we can definitely wait the 2 months for that.
Okay,
Well, and then the only other one that I would like to see at some point, Ben, is how we're gonna incorporate grant applications as it relates to capital projects, to make sure every time we're looking at one of these capital projects, we're also doing the exploration and the
So-
application process for a grant.
Yes, and at the next board meeting, there's gonna be some discussion about what's there for the some 26, but generally when you're talking about grants, you're doing a year out. So there's gonna be some discussion about that as well.
So the board's already gonna cover that, so I could just go back and read the board.
Somewhat, but I would say also as part of our process, like we have a spreadsheet for the CIP. And
Yeah.
we should be incorporating, if we
Great.
can, notes on what things might be eligible for it in the future.
Okay, good.
And I think you have to, if I remember correctly, I think it's next year's budget that you're gonna have to cut a whole bunch from the CIP. Cause it was over the threshold when we were moving stuff around. Okay.
I don't know if this is not future or it's something we talk about at this meeting, but so there's a village hall public meeting about applying for a I think it's CBDG, that's what it's called.
The grant, CBD
The grant.
grants.
So I mean, there is nothing yet, but it could be a potential funding source in the future. It just depends on timing, how long we want to wait for it.
Well, I think Julie applied
Yeah. No,
once for it
once, yeah, but
and I didn't get it.
I don't think she,
I think,
She requested to apply, the board said no, but she had already hired someone, someone to
It-
write the,
Failing.
it was Bailey Street.
Baylex
and-
to write the
But-
application to the tune of whatever.
But the village
$1,000.
board at the time did not authorize the reimbursement resolution, and I don't think the engineering funds at that time.
No, Julie.
Maybe before my time, she
It was
applied
before,
before.
she applied a different time
A
and
different
we were
time.
turned down.
We were
Oh,
denied.
gotcha.
Yeah,
And we thought, we knew it was a long shot
Yeah, but I-
when she did it,
Yeah,
so we did,
Once applied, and then last year board denied application. And then, so maybe next year is the one.
So not to get too in the weeds, but it would be like we do engineering first and then we'd apply. And then you wait a little bit, so it'd extend the timeline a little bit, and it depends whether or not that project would be good or the street project would be better in either case. But there's gonna be a slight delay when utilizing the funds if that route to go forward.
okay. At 3:05, is there a motion to adjourn?
Wait, did we set our next meeting?
no, not yet, maybe June.
Just reconnect, or is there a specific date?
No, I don't think we had a specific date.
Okay, just reconnect in June, I mean,
I think,
set a
I
date.
thought, is that what I heard?
I think it, I mean, so we're gonna have, who knows, maybe all new board member or committee members, right? I mean, the new board will make those decisions, so maybe we ought to just wait until there is a new board chairman.
Well, there's a little problem with that because you're getting into budget time.
Yeah.
When you're gonna have to start reviewing everything. We're talking about a totally revamp of a TIF policy from staff. You wanna meet in May,
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Okay,
and probably after. the-
otherwise, you know, they will be 4 or 5
will there be,
hours long.
isn't the board meet, won't they make committee decisions before May or not?
It's going to be April for appointments.
Oh, thank you, I forgot we have meetings. Oh,
Okay,
so maybe.
but in any case, we're gonna put a May date down.
Yeah, like. 11?
Yeah, I think that's generally fine. Do we just want to keep it as the standing time that it typically
When
would be?
is-
And I think in the past it was a little bit more regular, so I just didn't know if anyone recalled what that was.
What were the typical finance meeting day?
It was the
Monday, 1 o'clock.
second-
But it's like, you know how like the board is like the third Tuesday of every month,
I think it was the second Tuesday.
Tuesday
Or
or
excuse me,
Monday?
second
Monday, so the 11th.
I'm good with that day.
I'm gonna be out of town, but don't worry. I'll be out of town.
2 p.m.
I think they were normally scheduled at 1. I mean, I
Either
don't
way
care,
is
but
fine, just.
Yeah, today was
better.
Can we do 1 at 5?
I can.
You just
No.
want to come hang out in the audience and answer questions.
No, I'll be sitting home watching the Zoom with my bowl of popcorn.
Oh my gosh. She's gonna chime in again. Wrong.
I did not
Going to do that.
I'm
You're
kidding.
gonna get a new cell phone, so no one knows.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
We do.
So move.
Motion by Vasco, second by Hausen, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
Thank you. And Denise, again, thank you for
Yeah,
your
thank you for your
service.
service.
Outstanding.
Your outstanding work on finance.
My pleasure.
And just be assured, we will screw something up without you.
No.
I think.